Hello and welcome to this very special edition of ET Now, Startup Central, India's first and only daily show dedicated to startups, entrepreneurship and technology. This is Krishna Kumar coming to you live from ET Now's Mumbai studios. And Chandra, it's a very special show today simply because it is one of the biggest stories that the Indian startup ecosystem has ever seen. I'm afraid not the happiest of it, but one that many lessons can surely be learned from, isn't it, Chandra?
That's right, Krishna. Hi there, I'm Chandra Shrikant coming to you from India's startup capital, Bengaluru. And this is really about the Stayzilla issue, not just Stayzilla, but the larger lessons that this has for the startup ecosystem. Remember, it's been over a fortnight since Stayzilla's co-founder and CEO Yogendra Vasupal was sent to jail for not paying up dues, and this was a month after he announced Stayzilla's shutdown. Now, there are views going back and forth. Was this the right thing to do? Was this a civil case turned into a criminal one? But Krishna, we have a big voice on the show today who's clearly turned around this debate around Stayzilla. It's none other than Karnataka's IT Minister Priyank Kharge. Now, Priyank was one of the first people to actually tweet in support of Stayzilla's founder. He said, he will be reaching out to Tamil Nadu's, his counterpart in Tamil Nadu as well. But in a new stance now, he spoke to my colleague Rahul Daima, and he said that startups are a pampered lot. They don't say anything when they get funded at dizzying valuations, when the going is good. But once they start seeing the first sign of trouble, they buckle down and blame the government for everything. He says they have to allow the judiciary to take its course and not really take sides on this issue. Let's listen into what Priyank Kharge had to say.
I don't support anything that's beyond the constitution or the laws of the land. Sure. So even if you have read my tweet accurately, I have very candidly quoted saying that I've spoken to my counterpart in Tamil Nadu, and I am sure that he will help the founder of Stayzilla, provided he's on the right side of the law. Mm-hmm. So that's what my stand has been, and it always will be. The reason why I stepped in was because there was a certain, it was unnerving for the ecosystem here in Bengaluru that this thing has happened. So based on merits of the case is only that I can also recommend. I cannot interfere with the process of judiciary or the process of, in the process of law, that's the police or the criminal case of this thing. So based on merits is what I have this thing. And as a custodian of the startup ecosystem, it's my responsibility as well to soothe any unsettled nerves. So when credible people from my ecosystem called up and asked me that this is what is happening, that's when I stepped in. And I don't think why I should go back on this thing. So if somebody has broken the law, he or she has to be punished. If they have not broken the law, but it's been misinterpreted by this thing, it's also the role of the government to ensure that the wrong done is corrected. Sure, yeah. So that was my stand and is my stand right now.
But would you agree that this entire episode has sent out a wrong message to the ecosystem at a time when even nationally we are talking about the Startup India initiative? In Karnataka, one of the first states to push out a startup policy and become the startup hub of sorts. This entire episode sort of demorals the entire entrepreneur ecosystem.
Oh, see, there is a learning in this. I personally feel the startup ecosystem is a very pampered lot. Okay, so the learning which I'm talking about here is that although the entrepreneur, they dive deep into their ideas, but they also need to safeguard the business side of it, and they need to learn the legal side of it. You cannot just have an idea and say this thing until and unless you have a complete 360-degree ecosystem built on your idea. You cannot really be successful. So there is a lot of learning from the Stayzilla for the startups itself. But I beg to differ, saying that an incident like this will bring the entire ecosystem down. So are you going to tell me that 7,000 odd startups are going to shut down tomorrow because of this incident? No. In fact, now the other startups throughout the country should pull up their socks and find out what is that needs to be done to be on the right side of the law. Yeah. So there is a learning from it. I don't think that it's sending out a bad message. So there are courts, there are laws to be followed. There are there is a register of companies, laws that are set. So you need to follow those. You can't be insulated by all this just because you're a startup. Right. So there is rules for startup, there's rules for individual entrepreneur, there's a rule for big corporate as well. So you can't say that nahi main startup hu mujhko bacha lo. That is not the right attitude. Yeah, because when you're getting dizzying valuations, you don't need any help. When you're getting high exits, you don't require any help. But when you have a bad day, you can't blame the government or you can't blame the laws of the land for that. But there is a learning for this, like I said earlier, and every startup should learn from this.
So that was Priyank Kharge, IT Minister for Karnataka, in conversation with ET Now's Rahul Dayama. In fact, Stayzilla is indeed the big story we're trying to analyze here on Startup Central. And Chandra, before we get to that interesting panel that we have got lined up for the audience, it's time to hear out another very important voice. And that voice is from Radha Shekhar of Jigsaw Advertising, the company that has actually filed the case against Stayzilla. Take a look at this.
Stayzilla owes us 1.72 crores and the bills due to us from January 2016 to May 2016, and the amount is 1.72 crores. And they got a funding of 13 million in March 2016. And since then they've been spending on swanky, large offices, high profile recruitments, and they have even been advertising on radio and newspaper as late as November and December 2016, when they owed us our dues, okay, and without informing us about the shutdown or even offering a settlement, they've shut down. Doesn't this amount to cheating? Okay, and once the case comes up, they say there was a dispute in services. There has been no communication of any dispute. If there is, let them produce it. And in fact, they have acknowledged the liabilities twice. There is an audit confirmation, and there was an email from the CFO of Stayzilla, Sachit Singhi, as late as December 2016, acknowledging this liability. Now, isn't all this cheating? We filed a police complaint on the advice of our lawyers, and there is an element of cheating. The police have taken the action, and the magistrate has remanded and also denied bail, only because he saw there is a criminal element in this, and we have nothing to comment on other things. Okay, so there has been a complaint. We are a middle class family. We are not funded by anybody, and we don't have a lobby, an ecosystem lobbying behind us. We only have our flat, and we have nowhere to go. We owe money to our vendors. We are liable to our vendors. And we are not able to pay our vendors because Stayzilla has cheated us. Now this flat I'm sitting in, maybe this is the last time I'm talking to you in this flat. Because even if I sell this flat to pay my vendors, I still fall short of 90 lakhs or so, and where do I go for the money? We have had very honest dealings with these people. We have not cheated anybody. They have cheated us.
You were on the minister, and a pretty powerful perspective coming from the company that took on Stayzilla now, saying that they themselves owe people a lot of money and they are not being funded by the ecosystem. They are from a middle class family. That's their perspective. But to really take this debate forward, not just what this means for Stayzilla, but the broader question: are startups a pampered lot? Do they perhaps complain too much at the first sign of trouble? We have a very interesting panel joining us, two startups and a venture capitalist. We have Naganand Doreswamy, the founder and CEO of IdeaSpring Capital, joining us from Bangalore. We also have Rashmi Padi, a member of the Health Yogi team, joining us from Bengaluru as well. And from Chennai, we have Amritash Mishra, who runs his own startup that's focused on on an online lending library. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us on ET Now. I want to start with Naganand, who perhaps is, not Health Yogi or the other side. So what do you make of the minister's argument? Are startups a pampered lot? They're okay in good times, but at the first time of trouble, they blame everything on the government. They really don't want to be accountable for anything.
So I think the Honorable IT Minister of Karnataka, Mr. Kharge, has made statements. I'm sure he has reasonings behind what he's saying. I don't want to comment on whether we are a pampered lot or not, but all I want to say is startup is a young industry in Bangalore and so in India, and we are growing up, and there will be a lot of learnings along the way, and there will be up and downs. We'll get funding at times. We'll have to see shutdowns, and we all know that there will be a lot of shutdowns in case of a startup ecosystem, and we all need to learn how to deal with this the right way. And I think that's the whole point of contention here, or where the discussion is going on, as to how should startups shut down, and what happens with the vendors, and what's the right way to do it. And I think that we should focus on that. And then I would not like to comment as much on pampered lot or not.
All right, let's now take this discussion away from Bengaluru and on to Chennai, to Amrutash Mishra, co-founder of Life Online. My question to you is simple. There is now talk of whether startups are a pampered lot or not. In fact, the reaction was that, when everything was going well, Startup India, Stand Up India is announced, and so many, boons and benefits are announced for startup ecosystem, nobody is complaining. And something like this happens, and then it seems as if the entire system is against entrepreneurs. As an entrepreneur yourself, how would you view the situation?
Yeah. Well, I think firstly there seems to be a clear distinction between entrepreneurs who are funded by their own money and the money from their families, friends, and relatives, and compared to entrepreneurs who are funded by a venture cap or by an angel fund. Clearly here the distinction is very clear. One is a family owned startup and small business on its own, and they are saying that we are also part of the ecosystem. So I mean, how can you say that the ecosystem is hurt, or if we are also hurt? And I guess the pampered lot, I guess the people who are funded are a little more pampered than the people who are not funded. And people who are not funded yet are, I mean, those who are working on their own money are a little more disciplined with their emotions, with their spends, with their relationships.
Amrita, interesting perspectives coming from you. You've clearly taken a contra view as far as this is concerned, but I want to bring in Rashmi Padhi at this point. He's a core member of the Health Yogi team set up, to fight on behalf of Yogendra Vasupal. Rashmi, beyond the obvious questions around Stayzilla, I want to bring in what Amritash is saying. Are startups funded by VCs treated differently from those that work on money from family and friends? Is there a clear bias there in way the ecosystem views small businesses versus VC-funded startups?
I would not say there is bias per se. Yes, the VC-funded startups do get more media bites, get to hear more about them. Apart from that, the ecosystem doesn't treat anyone differently. If I have to put it this way, what is happening today has got no bias how a company is running between a VC-funded company or per se a bootstrap company or a small business company, right? The perspective here, what is getting presented here is the law of the land getting followed or not? Now, this is what we call as a civil case, a dispute between two vendors. The point to note here is like not all the vendors are not paid. There's only one vendor which has not been paid, and clearly there is a dispute which is there, and this dispute needs to be resolved in a civil manner. If it is dragged towards a criminal way for filing fraud cases and stuff, then yes, people do come out and support who we believe are at a wrong, and we try to stand behind them. If on the other side, if Jigsaw would have said that, hey, I'm not being paid, and asked the ecosystem to support them, we would have supported him if he was right and taken the right approach there as well. It has been happening in the past, and it will happen every time we do that.
Right. Rashmi, I want to get Amritash to, answer you on that. Amritash, do you agree that if Jigsaw had gone about this, in a civil way, perhaps approached the civil court, not taken this hard stance, the ecosystem would have also supported Jigsaw? Do you agree with what Rashmi has just said?
Answer from whatever you said just now. No vendor on earth will start negotiating like this. I'm sure there are hundreds of unreplied emails and hundreds of unanswered calls before it's come to this stage. I really want to know how many emails were sent to Vasupal and how many times he hasn't replied before commenting on whether Jigsaw has taken an aggressive stand. I mean, you can imagine if he's a vendor which is not started up, he would want his reputation in an industry to stay. This is a very drastic step. Even if he gets his money back, he may not get a client ever again. So it's unimaginable for me as a vendor to companies. It's unimaginable for me to imagine that I would be so aggressive unless there has been a precedence, unless this is the absolute last step for me to take. So, I mean, let them tell us what else happened before. Then we can judge.
Right. Nagaland sir, want to bring you here. Where do you stand as far as this issue is concerned? Are funded startups perhaps, at a better advantage compared to those that rely on, non-VC type of funding, family and friends kind of scenario? And if Jigsaw, hadn't gone to court, hadn't filed a criminal case, would they have got the same level of support as Yogendra Vasupal?
So I think in terms of funded versus non-funded, one of the reasons why we see funded startups are pampered a lot is because probably the VCs, as you know, they expect the companies to grow faster because they have their own exit calendar that they need to meet to return money to their LP. So probably hence you kind of might see a little bit more aggressive push from the VCs for their startups to grow, as opposed to friends and family or self-funded startups where they can pace their own growth, right? So I think that is why we might be saying this. But in terms of payments, I think the same law or same rules apply for anybody, whether it's funded, non-funded, self-funded, family-owned, whatever, right? Because when you run a startup, if you owe money to somebody, you have to pay it. And if you really are very, very optimistic about your business and you shut down without having the money to pay certain people, then there's a law that will guide as to who gets money first and who gets paid money last, right? And also the fact that you're working on the bankruptcy law will help that even more. But if there is a dispute, then I think that's where we need to realize how best to deal with the dispute. And in this particular case, the feeling of the community is that this is probably a civil case, not a cheating case. That's what I think we believe, but obviously we don't have all the facts. But I think that's why we have to take the course of the law, and we'll see what comes out of it. But nevertheless, even if the startup, it has to pay all its vendors duly who have provided the services. But the only issue in startups is the chance of closing is fairly large. So I think we'll see more of this, and hopefully this will help all the, like Mr. Karge said, will help all the startups also to realize that what are their obligations, and when they're closing down, what process do they need to follow, and also for vendors to kind of learn if they have to go after payments, what is the best way to follow going forward. And this will be learning for everybody. But nevertheless, the whole process in this case is probably it should be a civil case, and the entrepreneur should not be in jail, right? I mean, the whole point is should the entrepreneur be in jail for this? Has he really cheated or not cheated? And I'm hoping that the judges will look at this very quickly and do the right thing going forward.
All right. All said and done, the entrepreneur doesn't deserve to be in jail is the word coming in from Nagaland Doraiswamy. Nagaland, I will come back to you on that, but for now I'm going to take this to Rashmi. That seems to be the consensus largely, that whatever be the situation, whatever be the case, there is no need for him to be in jail and denied bail time and again. But how do entrepreneurs looking at this sort of prepare themselves going forward from here on? Because keep in mind, when this case began, it was clear that Stayzilla was in the right and Jigsaw wasn't in the right. But right now there seems to be a lot of grey area that seems to be emerging.
So this is a learning for all of us on how the legal system works here in India. It takes time. So a legal system, unfortunately, in India takes time. Yogi and their family are fully aware of it, and they are prepared for the long haul. They are saying, we are right here, we have not done anything wrong, and we are not going to surrender for anything which is not right here, right? So given that stance, how they are taking, and the process of bail and the legal cases is actually going in the right direction. It is not going anything wrong. Yes, there is a disappointment in the ecosystem that why is he there in the jail when he should not be there. That is the case, it is there, but unfortunately that is how the legal process works. A point to note here is that a bail application is not the same as a trial. A bail application is very different how it works than how the trial works here. Now, when the trial starts and when the justice is delivered, it will be clear for everyone to see who is at right and who is at wrong. So if for all the people are anxious, there is a reason for being anxious, and the reason is that every startup has got vendors with whom they have dealings. Most of them dealings happen on good faith. There are agreements done, invoices done. Many a times vendors and startup invoices do not match. The expectations do not match. Yes.
Right, Rashmi. Yeah, I'm afraid we are running out of time on this discussion. But thank you so much, all three of you, for joining us on Startup Central to really dissect this issue. Clearly, a lot of grey areas, before some resolution comes aside, but hopefully that should happen soon, because in the end of the day, not sending out a good message, to see an entrepreneur in jail. But let's hope they become more transparent in how they are going to go about resolving this payment issue. Amritash, Naganand, and Rashmi, thank you all so much for your time this evening. But moving on from that, Krishna, we also decided to talk to more startups on this issue, and Rahul caught up with some startups at the NASSCOM startup warehouse here in Bengaluru to really get a sense of what they think about the issue, who's in the right, who's in the wrong, could it have been handled better. Let's listen into what these startups had to say.
There has to be a clear demarcation between whether this is a case of fraud or whether it's a case of business failure, and the two have to be dealt with differently. I think the way the whole matter has been handled is somewhat incorrect, in the sense the way the CEO was whisked away to an unknown destination as if he's some known criminal or a terrorist. That is not quite fair.
Got it. Coming to you, the IT minister has told us that startups are the pampered lot. When things seem to be going gung-ho, the valuations are right, the exits are good, everything's fine. But when there's an issue, you turn back and say, hey, the laws aren't good. How do you respond to that? What do you make of this jibe?
So, to that statement of IT minister, we would say that we were always in touch with the government to get the things done, to take their help, to get the right policies drafted. So it's not like that this is first time we are turning to them. But yeah, when something goes haywire, when things go beyond our control, right? And especially in this case where a person has been targeted, right? I mean, the whole scene has been projected like somebody is being targeted. I mean, the problem can be on the both sides. So nobody took a time where they could sit across the table and they could find exactly what issues. Let law that takes its own course. We are not saying that the proper judgment should not be served. Let it be, but it's harassment.
Well, what do you make of this jibe? Are you guys the pampered lot? Would you agree in the first case?
So success has many fathers.
Yeah.
Failure has none. So the moment you see a lot of success, there are a lot of people taking credits for it. Government takes credit, investors take credit, founders take credit, employees take credit. It's unfortunate that when there are failures, everyone's pointing fingers saying, oh, these are pampered lot, or these guys don't have the right business plan, these guys don't know what business they're doing, they just sit in front of a system and code whatever they want, they're not connected with their customers or consumers, they don't know how to manage their money. And in this case, apparently now we also need to know the exact differences between civil law and criminal law. Clearly the entrepreneur does not have a clue whether he's being tried for a civil case or a criminal case, and he's suffering for it. As entrepreneurs, all of us are currently confused.
Has this led down this entire episode for you as an entrepreneur? And also, what are the learnings that a startup can take away from this entire episode?
I think I wouldn't say it's a letdown. It's one of the things which happened. Unfortunate, but yeah, something which happened. Learning for us as startups is to figure out how to shut down a company if something like this happens. And I will touch upon one point he said. Both guys in this episode both of them are entrepreneurs. Why are we calling the guy who got funded as the only entrepreneur or as the only startup guy? The other guy is also running his own business. So, what the truth is, no one really knows. Probably with a good investigation that will come out. But very unfair to call one guy an entrepreneur and the other guy just a vendor. He's also running his own company.
True.
Just because he's not funded by a VC does not mean he's not an entrepreneur.
Who is the entrepreneur? Who is the vendor? Who is at fault and who is not? Those are the questions that the Stayzilla controversy continues to raise, and we will be keeping our eyes on this story even as it reaches towards hopefully a good conclusion. But with that, we need to wrap things up here on this particular edition of 18 Hours Startup Central. Thank you so much for watching. From Chandra on my side, it's a wrap.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.